The Organization of American States is the world's oldest regional organization, dating back to the first International Conference of American States, held in Washington, D.C., from October 1889 to April 1890. That meeting approved the establishment of the International Union of American Republics, and the stage was set for the weaving of a web of provisions and institutions that came to be known as the Inter-American System, the oldest international institutional system. The OAS came into being in 1948 with the signing in Bogotá, Colombia, of the Charter of the OAS, which entered into force in December 1951. It was subsequently amended by the Protocol of Buenos Aires, signed in 1967, which entered into force in February 1970, by the Protocol of Cartagena de Indias, signed in 1985, which entered into force in November 1988, by the Protocol of Managua, signed in 1993, which entered into force in January 1996, and by the Protocol of Washington, signed in 1992, which entered into force in September 1997. The organization was established in order to achieve among its member states, as stipulated in Article 1 of the Charter, an order of peace and justice, to promote their solidarity, to strengthen their collaboration, and to defend their sovereignty, their territorial integrity, and their independence. Today, the OAS brings together all 35 independent states of the Americas and constitutes the main political, juridical, and social governmental forum in the hemisphere. In addition, it has granted permanent observer status to 70 states, as well as to the European Union, EU. The organization uses a four-pronged approach to effectively implement its essential purposes, based on its main pillars: democracy, human rights, security, and development.
Give thanks and praise. Give thanks and praise. We share this information for, again, reiterate this fact that this island, now called Jamaica, so called by the British, is in fact one of the locations in what is known as the America, plural Americas. There is no African attachment here. So, just for the record, again, we here in this hemisphere are known as Americans before we were invaded by foreigners. It's as simple as that. And there's all kind of documentation out there to validate this statement. Now, for the people who are Africans that are here, I can't interfere with that kind of affair. That's your business. But do not at no point try to broad brush or put a paintbrush across the whole island saying we are African. Hey, if you're just attaining your freedom, that's you. I've been declaring that a long time ago. First in time is usually truest. So we will never subject ourselves to a foreign king, nor a foreign crown, nor a foreign god, period. I came across this information. A good sister shared it with me today. So I'll see if I can play it. At least I can hear the verbiage. Oh, let me see if I can. I probably can do this.
Of course, the Queen does transitioning and all of that. And he's going to be talking about the immediate transition of the British state to be indigenous, very important topic. So it's a trending story. And so we have him on now to talk in particular about reparations. We welcome you, Chief Samako. Greetings.
Greetings and greetings to you and all the good Africans across this beautiful island.
Yes,
I don't know if
I
it's
don't
your
know if it's
side, but you're breaking up a bit.
So I hope this can be adjusted
I'm
as
hoping
soon
this
as
thing
possible
is
because,
showing.
you know, the communications that we have here is very, very
No,
important.
this should be out there,
Now,
so we are sharing.
called a press conference that was called, you know, like in a short space of time, because I guess you figured it was very important that you pass on this information, very important information. Tell us exactly about the whole idea of reparations and exactly, because so many people have questions who probably weren't on, and even those who were on had a lot of questions regarding what's going to be taking place. So we'd like for you to just explain to us in layman's terms exactly what it is that's going to be taking place in terms of reparations.
I recognize that you've asked with regards to reparations, but from the outset, I think I have a very important and crucial announcement that I must make to you and the good people of the island. And then after making that announcement and processing and digesting it, we
Again, people, I'm coming across this kind of information and these people. So obviously, you have a group of people take counsel amongst themselves, and you know, you just say implement some kind of African policy or approach, I guess, to their freedom. But my thing is that it's African, and a man such as I do not declare myself to be African or coming from Africa at any point. So when we hear this, brother, yeah, that I do not know, I do not even consent to whatever it is they are trying to do. Will not interrupt, you know. Because if you're saying you're from Africa and someone took you from Africa and brought you here and you're supposed to get, you know, reparations, then who am I to, you know, interfere? I'm just saying we are not all Africans here, and we don't claim to be so. And around here, all the islands are known as American islands. It's Americas. This is why you have an organization of American states, not American government, not Jamaican government, American states. And Jamaica is a sovereign, independent American state. It's simple as that. Don't try to entrap us or enslave us with an African concept. If that is an organization, then say it is an organization, because we represent that information also. However, let's continue to listen, but I'm not aware of these people. And it's going to be interesting.
can revert back to the topic of reparations.
So this announcement is a recent announcement that you haven't made before, and you're making it for the first time here. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Go right ahead. Yes.
Yes, very good. And before making my announcement, because I know that we have listeners and viewers from all around the world, many of whom are doing diverse things. And the statement I will make is no small statement. So I would like to request that if you are driving or doing anything that requires your undivided attention, that you take a break from doing that so that you do not endanger yourself with your own joy and excitement, and that you can receive the fullness of this statement and appreciate the implications therein. So I would just like to take 30 seconds for any drivers and people doing anything challenging to pause
Okay, so
and prepare themselves.
Thank you. I'm sending out the live, so I'm focused, but I'm still sending out the live, especially with this announcement you just made about something that you're going to mention to us that's going to be really impacting. So you can go right ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you kindly.
You're welcome.
In my capacity as president of the United Kingdoms of Africa and chairman of the 6th region, at precisely 2:40 p.m. yesterday, the 12th of September, during our visitation briefly to King's House, Jamaica, we concluded the final protocol in retiring the 1962 Constitution of Queen Elizabeth II. I would like to repeat that statement.
Please do.
We concluded.
Very interesting. I would ask the question, who is a we that conclude this constitution? Very interesting. Very interesting.
The final legal protocol in retiring the 1962 Constitution of Queen Elizabeth II. The Queen's Constitution has been replaced by the Charter of the United Kingdom of Jamaica and New Africa. And of course, a new constitution.
The Charter of Jamaica and New Africa are and.
Will indeed be established the second. The Queen's Constitution has been replaced by the Charter of the United Kingdom of Jamaica and New Africa. And of course, a new
Charter of Jamaica, a New Africa, here in America, here in what is known as the Americas. So this is what are the best the Pan-African have to offer. This is the best. You have to offer our people. I tell we here, who are the true hearers of this estate. You're going to call with location now. No more Jamaica, but a New Africa. I must see one Steve Curry and some other Rasta sit down and try this Pan-African mess. Because I'm telling you who are the origin, who start this Pan-African movement, this Pan-African mess. You get me? And it started with the guy on the mainland. Just check my platform and you're going to see it right there. And I'm not sure if this guy is I'm sure he's not a Rasta, but I'm not sure if he's a Muslim or what he is. But these Moors of Spain and their, progenies, they're no different from the children of the colonizers. They're one and the same. People are looking at color. People are looking at skin tone. And this is one of the greatest deceptions. I have no problem with you as an organization saying some guy kidnapped you from some location and you want repatriation, but be specific. It would be like a man say, hey, me a Rasta and Jamaica a Rasta, giving the impression as if majority of the Jamaican populace here are Rasta. Not go like that. Probably 1% or less. And these things are what we call truth, but we don't have this kind of truth. Ask yourself what is going on. People, you have always been free. People, you hear me say it 1,000 times, say you have always been free. And you have to just demonstrate that. So here is a next group of ones where sit and, you know, because I'm quite familiar with this kind of organization. It come out of Africa, where brethren create them own group and, you know, try run them own monetary system, which is not bad. We're not really not these things, but don't label us, classify us, misclassify us as, you know, what we are not. Why is it so hard to say, hey, you Black Americans, you're at home? You are the original people. This is why I said Black Americans searching for identity. That include us on these islands. In this archipelago, it includes us. We are the Americans here. Not these foreign Caucasoid or pale man. No, politically, this is how they take root. This is why we have nothing to do with their political system. Remove the political system and these people have to go back to their origin, all of them, including the ones who look like I guarantee all who are participating in this thing get a fat check from one of those Israeli type guys. I guarantee it. Even when it's saying, hey, we're Africa. I never trust you people, man. It's hard. Because you never speak the truth. You guys are acting, hey. Before 1492, this was what it was. No, 1492 was the mark of an invasion by foreigners. And the very same foreigners came here and structured this governmental system that is in place. And they look like us. This is why you have some of these old presidents from the South. They'll say, hey, we have a Black congressman here and a Black congressman there. And I've shared information where I say all of these Black congressmen have white daddies.
New constitution will...
And they get that training. It's called miscegenation. This is how them can rule perpetually over a class of people. Because them have people looking like themselves ruling, but with total different intent. Ask Andrew Holiness if he doesn't totally comprehend that statement. Just ask him. Look like us. You get me? But his interest is outside of us. And that's a fact.
Indeed be established by the new executive council and the good people of this great island. And so, without further ado,
what good people, and I'm totally unaware of these things. Wouldn't that make sense to all one of these kind of guys that's here on the island touch base and say, yo, all of these other little groups, make a link with the Bobo Shanti, probably the Bobo Shanti night. Make a link with the Rastafari, probably Rastafari don't get for them memo. So on to all of these other organizations who exist here in the Americas. Don't pick out Jamaica and try to use this location as a launching pad for your Pan-African agenda. Speak the truth. Black Americans, you people in all the Caribbean islands that look like I with this Negroid pipe, the Negroid stock. You are the Americans. You are the original people. You're no Africans. Don't let these guys mislabel you. Again, it's like from one enslavement to another. When we are saying here, freedom, free dominion, free domain. Don't let them fool you.
Let me be the very first to congratulate each and every African, not only on the island of Jamaica.
Hear that? He's not speaking to us who are Americans here. He's speaking to Africans. I keep telling you guys, don't watch these guys with the wordplay. They have no interest in you guys here. You understand? So this is how the so-called learned type usurp people's place. Because I'm quite sure it's very profiting commercially for most of our local people participating in this when they might ignore where they are. Them now gonna stand up and say America our place, make we defend this place. Make we look at the foreigners that invade this place. Let we look at the children of the colonizers, because they are one and the same oppressors. No, most are not sold out. So it's a brand new, that's a thing on our bring forward now. And I said, we reject all foreign claim, but this is not Africa. And irrespective of what to try for doing, can't, turn here into Africa. It's impossible. Because Africa is over there. You understand? It's crazy.
But throughout all of the 6th region, throughout the continent of Africa, indeed every African around the world, I congratulate you.
Listen to the narrative, the continent, throughout the continent of Africa. Now, is there not an American continent, my people? Is there not an American continent? Just like I show you, Organization of American States. So if you're not talking government, you talk about state, then this is not Africa. And if people are here saying or claiming to be African, listen, put them on a boat now. Take them out of here. So you can take all of your African, lobbying over there. This is not Africa. And this is the subtlety what I'm use for maintain this mental slavery. I wonder who is really behind all of this charade. Because they have to be one of them, Israeli, Jewish type, Caucaside, very wealthy folk. Usually are them kind of people fund these things.
I congratulate our people on this
Silly man.
legendary island.
Yeah.
As of now, we are legally and officially a free people.
Tell we not new. The officials here are public officials here, totally aware. So we have always been free. I'm probably the first man who come demonstrate that in this time. Yet, we're being ignored. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Because when I stand out like a sore thumb. But what is going on now? Who are you? So what you say? You have to claim to be some African to be free? No, my people. You've always been free. The moment you take on this African agenda, try know you can't claim no kind of sovereignty here. How can you when this is not Africa? Irrespective of the name where you might try to place. If this is the American continent and he's talking about the African continent, it's two separate and distinct locations, my people. If we are Americans here originally, and he's talking to Africans, my people, don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. Man, these guys are slick.
Okay, now that's a big, broad statement. You have my news editor. I mean, like, you're really getting himself together and trying to figure out, what did he just say? Am I really hearing what I'm hearing? Yes. Am I hearing what I'm hearing? So let's have that repeated and just break it down so people can get a better understanding of what you just said. I understand what you said, but please, say it again for us, please. Repeat it and repeat it. Repeat. And how was this done? How was this manifested? How was this manifested? How was this made to happen? We need the details of that.
Right. So just to repeat and reiterate the primary statement. First and foremost, again, in my capacity as President of the United Kingdoms of Africa and Chairman of the 6th Region, at exactly yesterday afternoon, we successfully concluded the final legal protocol in retiring the 1962 Constitution of Queen Elizabeth II. With regards to how that was completed, that is no small discussion, as the protocol pertaining to kingdoms and the protocol amongst kings is fundamentally different than the protocol pertaining to parliaments and the protocol that drives relations between presidents. And so we have been in extensive exchange of communication with Her Majesty's office, the Queen of England during her life, and the Governor General's office, and the former Prince of Wales, now His Majesty King Charles. These communications actually have a legacy of exchange as it pertains to Her Majesty of going back to the beginning of this year, which is part and parcel of what led up to the initial decree that was made on June 22nd of this year and publicly broadcasted around the world, and indeed shared with the Governor General of Jamaica's office and the entire international.
It seems like them African want to be the new slave master. Them really don't want to let the people them free at all. It's really interesting. These Africans, I said, them talk to the colonizers and them in a meeting with these oppressive rulers, these tyrants, you know what I mean? And a lobby in order for be the new slave driver. That's basically what I really have said to me. That's basically it. Because if the corporate construct as it is a fiction out there, you understand? Then what are we talking about here? When the individual man and woman will not be able to stand up and say, hey, I'm free. You know what I mean? Where is the truth? At what point were our people displaced from Africa and brought here on this rock? At what point? You can't tell me 60,000 years ago. You understand? Because foreigner invade this place in 1492 when I was here and our ancestors was here. So I don't comprehend this agenda and why our local people didn't choose to organize themselves as American here and establish themselves as such. opposed to bringing all this divide. One thing we know, truth is supreme. And if you look at some old documents, you'll see it said, Ahuuakh, chiefdom, has nothing to do with Africa. It's a Ahuuakh. Most people term it Arawak. So whatever indigenous status you guys are working with in order to misplace our people again, then I'm here to say, watch out. We not acknowledge no foreign claim, we not recognize it. This is not Africa, and this can never be Africa. We are in America. Aren't we? This is not the continent of Africa. This is the continent of America. So we as a people have to know, say, boy, we Black Americans are just that. Americans. We not give away nothing. And we won't allow these guys to usurp our place. Then when the people that is originally here finally get tricked and leave, who is going to take this place? Wake up, our people. Don't be deceived by these fanciness and the promise of some, money or repatriation, wealth. Listen, if you want to go back to Africa, go. Shouldn't be an issue. But don't try to convert our people here into something that they're not. It's the foreigners' specialty. They'll never tell the truth. They cannot. The truth is, void in them. Them not have no truth.
Community. So it has been a royal process, not a parliamentary process, although our kingdom's parliament was also active amongst the kingdoms. But notwithstanding, it has been a royal process in the background. And yesterday, we concluded that procedure in terms of the legal protocol that relates to establishing legal sovereignty on this island.
So you said it wasn't a parliamentary situation.
Them thing here come from up in this thing I come from the Moors. This thing I come from the Maroons. This thing I come from the very same Freemasonic brotherhood. This is where this I come from. So them I try undermine what is in place. Yeah, the government of Jamaica is a corporate construct, but there's what is known as the Organization of American State. One of the oldest institutions there is, but everybody undermine that institution because it's not beneficial to these Pan-African. You understand? Them promote Pan-Africanism and never the Pan-American Union. They never promote that. How many people know about the Organization of American State? Because once you subscribe to that organization, such as us, then if you try to say you're indigenous, naturally you're the original people here because you're now Americans. You get it? And this is outside of Parliament. Now you don't need no visa, as them have said. Don't listen to these foreigners. Because if America is my land, my ancestors did traverse this place before foreigners came here and create these imaginary borders. It's whatever you choose to subscribe to. So this is just like another political party, which is foreign to us. But this is not Africa. Listen to the narrative. African people, African continent. We're not Africans here. And this is the truth where our people lack. Yeah, man.
Situation. Expound on that first, please.
Well, I suspect the challenge for most people on this good island is by virtue of having a prime minister and government, they tend to confuse the government with the state. And obviously, when it comes to issues of state, that is issues pertaining to the crown. And so
this is how them people, yeah, these foreign guys, this foreign guy, this is how them undermine a system. Them now just try undermine whatever the government have in place. Them a try divert you and usurp your place. Tell you say you're African because, you know, these guys are selling up these rural areas to these, you know, Chinese, because majority of the populace are look to, you know, entertainers and these divas and popular figures in the mainstream media that the same political construct elevate. And the regular peasants look upon these people as if, you know, they're gods or they can influence them. And you know what I mean? They have the best interest at heart. And a man like me I said, me know uno. Yeah, man. I know so what I do is wrong. And you guys know that. How you gonna try fool a people all the time? When the jig is up, man, you cannot fool all the people all the time. You're gonna fool some of the time. But man, you guys are gonna not give up. It's basic, it's logical. This is not Africa. If you have any affinity to Africa, leave this hemisphere. Problem solved. Don't create this anarchy and act like say, boy, you know, when I talk about freedom or una revolution. No, una is part of the problem. Yeah. Because una now come and say, free the people. Una say, make we be the slave masters. That's what una really has said. And them na pick out a few celebrities for be, you know, the new form of elite for the dunce people. Because the dunce people they can try with them little trickery. Them gimmick career. It's only the people that want to read and write on this level. Talking about legality, we talk about law and what is lawful. Who is you with your little group, your subversive group, but you dismiss a constitution? How? And if the queen dead, then the people are free. If the people choose to subject themselves to a foreign crown, then so be it. Now, if them choose to subject themselves to another foreign system, so be it. A man like I, we say this is America and this is our ground. This is our place. When you stand up as America, everybody have to pay you tribute. Them not want you know that. When you stand up as American here, all of the resources where them a take, where them have to go bring back or them have to compensate you, because you are the original here. This is why them have to usurp your place, telling you you're African. So them can gift this place to other foreign men, such as themselves. I remember, you know, are these people not Africans? Think about it now, my people. You've always been here. At what point were you transported on a boat and come here? Which part? Ask Andrew Holiness for looking at information and call your name. Let them even try forge a document like that. No such thing. So I don't know what this thing is. And when I finish with this, I'm going to play a next set of information. We're going to break down a lot of the, you know, confusion in this very Rastafari movement, because it's a movement where powerful and strong, but because of certain individuals, the things where, you know, weak out. But Rasta is just like nature. You understand? Now go through we say Congo Bongo, or them commercialize Rasta. But we don't know about where them foreign money are. Just him headdresser show me say, me don't know which God him a heal or a serve. Or who them people, yeah, our people are mixed with in order to gain commercial favors. Or who them people, yeah.
Issues of government are issues of parliament, so to speak, at that level. And so I make that distinction so that our people can appreciate the distinction between parliamentary issues that they would see their ministers addressing and stately issues that would belong exclusively to the protocol and realm of the head of state.
Yeah, that are the Governor General. Now the Governor General for directing people to the Organization of American State. You get me? And people for do them own research and choose to subscribe to what them choose to. That's why we use a world passport, you know. Even when we upgrade our regular passport. You get me? And going forward, we have a next passport for even move towards too. Because we can do all of these things. There's no limitation or restriction for us as free people. It's only the restrictions where you choose to place upon yourselves once you're lawful in your capacity. And not a criminal, but look like criminal have them own kind of legal team and legal process and do them own thing. Criminality. Criminally. Crime. We have enough of it. Enough of phone shenanigans. So we are saying we not recognize it. We not accept it. We are reject it because we are American here so first. Yeah, we're not business with what them deal with, but don't use not big broad brush. You know, they even come consult and link up and say, oh, we can chop this thing up and incorporate and put it together where it benefit all of our people. We're just like some place where have all kind of minerals can sit down and live off of them minerals. Our people can find themselves in a much better situation. Our people, not just a handful of foreign people who come live amongst us. Lightning phone, man. The universities want to go into this foreign institution really have our people shook. You know, these people, where them learn, just come out and teach a whole bunch of mess and create a whole bunch of chaos. And behind the scenes, them and these foreigners wrap up in a bed. Check them bank accounts. Check how them really are live, no man. Ask them if them have the common people, what them call peasants, best interest at heart. Ask them, no man. Make them demonstrate these things now. Now worship these people.
Okay. So based on what you've just said, which is, a big story, where does that put Jamaica now? What is our status? What would our status be, I should say?
So as a matter of fact, the charter for the United Kingdom of Jamaica and New Africa is unequivocally and legally established as
United Kingdom of Jamaica and New Africa. And as I said, I'm about to try use our people like them. How would them take our people for? Let me tell you something about our location, because I want to listen to my tapes. The very first postal location was established here on this island. This is why we have a king's house and most of the island have no king's house. Mainland have White House where them build the other day up in a DC, is a whole corporate fictional district where them are used for government. But we have a king's house here. The very postal location and postal system where them are used federally for govern everything. It was started right here. At least 100 years before 1776, when Benjamin Franklin, Freemason Benjamin Franklin, do same thing on the mainland. Then imitate everything here from the de jure. That's where them create the fiction. Them have something substantive to create the illusion from. So our location and on a joke location. So when you see them come and attack our location this way, and I try sway our people like as if, you know, we drop out of the sky. You know what I mean? We've always been here. And all of you foreigners came here and saw us. And when I say we had Nestorian king, it break on the heart. It truly break on the heart, because I'm always a subject and I bow down to some foreign crown. When we are say, oh, we have the crown. But I don't want to hear that. I don't want to bow down to some foreign king. And I preach to some foreign god. And now look at the chaos we are permeate on the whole location. We don't have them kind of view there. Is when we start look within ourselves, at them way there, and start know ourselves, and start separate ourselves from enough of these foreigners where spoil us. And the foreigner them come spoil our people, because before these times, them would have called our people noble people. And we them used to call it noble people. But foreigner come spoil us. When the miscegenation became rampant by the rape of a native woman with these foreign men. So them kind of truth our people not have. And as such, you know, we allow some of these foreign people to tell us about we are all these things when we are not.
We speak presently as it pertains to the good people of the island. I think, you know, we are at a moment in time and history that is unprecedented to our collective body. Not to say that the African family has not gone through this experience. We know as ancient Israelites.
So the word play, African family and ancient Israelite. You hear them argument there? Yet if you're going to use biblically, they're going to say a 7 family come out of Africa. And the Israelite, they're not necessarily one. So that work? Yeah, man. So, you know, as we go to the end of this thing, we're going to say the root at least. I can't wait for some of our brethren. Them we have more information than me about these things. Take on this thing and chop it up. So all I do is just get the information and I say, hold on, man. Let me share this and share this. And then share something else. All day.
We've gone through captivity many times before in days of old, and we've come out of that captivity. And in accordance with the laws of kings who sit before the throne of God, today we find our...
So, according to the laws of kings who sit before the throne of God, then we have to ask ourselves, what you talk about? You understand? Because we say according to the laws of nature, according to natural law. You get me? We don't want a white oppressor. We don't want a black oppressor. We don't want a Chinese oppressor. We don't want a foreign oppressor. We don't want none of it. And that we are said. We are saying to remove yourself from a place. Get yourself organized and go up on a boat, go up on a train, go up on a plane, but leave this hemisphere. So we can stay over that side over there and we can salute, you know. And when time to come, we come all pass through and say, oh, I saw Africa nice, but we don't leave, we not create confusion. You understand? What we don't want to do right now upon the island? We don't not do all these kind of things. You people are insane. We don't make them kind of move here. Go up against, you know, we the people. That's what me say. I want to make it look as if, oh, it's for the interest of the people. without the people's consent, without full disclosure? How can it be for the interest of the people if the people don't know about it? When a lot of you people were in the rural communities sell out most of this place to foreign interests. And we're supposed to trust you guys. Insanity. Insanity, man. We're not bow to no guy out there. We said death to both black or white oppressor. Death, we said to them. We're running off from our presence. We're not come to it with on a fancy talk and not kind of fancy title. We're not impressed. You fool us once, shame on us. You fool us twice, then you're going to fool us thrice and just keep fooling us over and over and over and over and over. It's like, I want to say a new generation will come every time someone just plants some seed and then, you know, here on it is. Hey, you're all African. Where? You may be African over there. But how you going to tell I, say I am African when I hear some of that? And I ain't in a slavery. And I see all the problem and atrocity we are going over Africa. How are you going to organize yourself over there first? It's crazy.
Yourself again coming out of some 400 years of captivity, or at least in the case of this island, when we began our contestation with the British in 1655, some 367 years of.
Hey, stop talk, joker. It must start with 1655. It starts with 1492 when you and your people, were called the Moors, came here. You get me? You were speaking Latin, Spanish at that time. So don't talk about not just 1655 with the British. What you know about our place? What you know about our area? What even the people and we work with you know about our place and area when we are teach them kind of information. Yeah. You with this indigenous mess want to ignore the original. Because on in a location for over 300 years, then you can claim indigenous according to the corporate construct called United Nation, created by the United States, another corporate construct located in New York City. So this is what, you know, it is all about. Selling out the people perpetually. We are no perpetual slave, So we are rebutting a claim. We not acknowledge no foreign claim. We're no African. We don't want no African title, no African label, no African name. Leave our place and take your Africans with you. As simple as that. And you need to hurry up and name the rest of sellout that's here.
Of captivity and affliction. So in that regard, the first protocol is to process, digest, breathe.
I'm still digesting and processing right now.
And process this new reality, appreciate this new reality, which will have implications not only within the region of the Caribbean, but ultimately across the entire global community, especially as the kingdoms of continental Africa and the indigenous peoples throughout all of these 6 regions.
Continental Africa. You understand? This is what you call paper genocide in a people. Yeah, man. Man, not whatever it is, uno as a group are going with, but we're on a broad brush it like everybody a clown. This is what I call paper genocide. So them a wipe you guys out again on this island. You get me? And look at who is doing it. It's not the pale man. It's not the caucus side. It's not even the China man. Look at the man them we are selling them down the river. Look at the man them will tell you American that you're African. When you claim African, no. Foreign man can come here and continue to abuse you. Because right now we have a truth where them can't touch we now. So we don't know study, we don't know listen, we don't know pay attention. We have a truth where them can't study. So what do you think them come with now? These so-called learned people, I guess them remove the 1962 Constitution. And I come with some African makeup writing about a lot. Where want to get them kind of people here from? When the very 1962 Constitution is where free the whole of people them boy. Yeah? Where want to get these people from? Look at the enslavers. Look at traitors. Look at these people where a link with this man I should be charged for treason. Them thing here treasonous conduct in the Americas. You come try it, implement and establish some African state in the Americas. Are you people insane? This is treasonous conduct, people. All of the wealth of the native, the original Americans here, are gone forever. When we are now reclaim our birthright, our inheritance, our hereditament, here is these treasonous, treacherous Maroons and Moors. Well, I the only way to see it, probably, hey, I might be wrong, so I'm going to leave room for disappointment. Say, hey, I might be wrong, but yeah, that's all I can see. I can't see this I come out at Chief Curry and some other little man. You understand? Look at what the man them are do to the, to the people. Very protection from that 62 Constitution is the protection of the people. They don't let these, secret society brothers place you in bondage all over again. When right now you are free and you are protected as a free people. You don't need this burden.
Begin to work closely together in this new era of economic prosperity, industrialization, development, the eradication of poverty, and an appreciation of our cultural heritage as we engage in real time this spiritual, political, royal, cultural renaissance.
It's truly a rebirth, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
It
Really, yeah, it truly is. I didn't expect this, but give thanks that you're able to announce it here. And of course, there are going to be so many other stories coming out of this. Of course, I know you put out a press release, definitely with regards to this. Okay, we don't have much time left, but can we segue right into the reparation situation for here in Jamaica?
Yes.
That was
With
announced on
regards to reparations for the island of Jamaica, the structure and package that is being put in place speaks to a parity value of 198,000 British pounds per person. And that is to be allocated over a period of 33 years in a parity amount of 500 British pounds per month over the course of the next 33 years. And that will be distributed in the official currency of the 6th region, which is the African Kingdom's Lumi.
Okay. So in terms of when this will actually take place, and of course we need to know the details about how people are going to network and of course work together in circulating the Lumi to do business and so forth.
Right. In terms of how it will take place, obviously we anticipate and hope that the Prime Minister Andrew Holness,
You're there.
all members of political parties who were vying for their own interests in whatever capacities and realms will be fully
trees and this
in cooperation
Maroon
and diplomacy with the new transition that must immediately begin. The payments for reparations are scheduled to begin on October 1st of this year. So that is literally next month.
Yeah.
And in leading up to that, I know that everyone has a previous view of how to interact with Lumi, but of course, as Jamaica takes an economic leadership role on the global stage, and in particular throughout this region, being the Caribbean, throughout the sixth region, and in joining the African family, it is our expectation that this new rally, as it were, this new epoch will be embraced in mind, body, and soul by our people. And in terms of the modus operandi, the Lumi will be driving trade between Jamaica and the Caribbean region, between Jamaica and Central, North, and South America, between Jamaica and Europe, between Jamaica.
So you say Jamaica they want to use as a launching pad. And why is that? Why is that? Man, why we have so much sellout on our island? Why we have some people where instead of them use the ingenuity and the ideas where these foreigners are come with for us, you know, make it work for us as a people without a fear talk about say we are something that we're not. Why our people can't view things, you know, in a way where benefit all our people? Them just want for them pocket fill and then them say, yeah man, sell out them, clown them on. You understand? Why is that?
And Asia. And as we begin to establish our economic feet, if you will.
I wonder why I never go over Haiti. We have so much turmoil and crisis and started from over Haiti and use Haiti as the launching pad. You understand? Why I never do that? Oh, we are so accommodating where any little scam, any little sellout, any little, you know, what? Repatriation money, all right. I could sit down and brainstorm and put together a package and all right, I could do it, all right, we're going to put it together now and this is it. Not a bad idea, but why we have to tell ourselves that we are African in order to do these things? Are you people insane in necessary foreign people invade us, including these Africans? Well, I tell you, it's tough.
In the same way that we established our athletic feat as the fastest on the planet, we will establish our economic feat so that the world can appreciate what Jamaican economic leadership looks like in the agricultural sector, in arts, in culture, in industrialization,
let's do it for Jamaica.
in
Why we are
medicine,
doing it for Africa?
in
Let's
science,
do it
in
for Jamaica.
technology, and all areas of human social development that speak to the needs that the global African family has in this 21st century, as well as the rest of the entire human family. So this is a transitional period. It will not just manifest.
Right.
We must now begin to apply ourselves and achieve all that we have previously talked about, dreamed about. Those dreams now become part of our new reality, which we must implement and achieve.
Okay, so we only have about 2-3 minutes left, but there are persons who are asking, messaging me and asking me, how do they go about qualifying? I mean, you know, what's the procedure now?
Yeah.
So
To be a
this
part of it.
will belong to the entire new transference of state governance and administration. So the new executive council, which is articulated and named in the press release that was given on Sunday,
Right.
will obviously be assuming those roles and responsibilities. And will have to be establishing themselves into that new modus operandi as well. This isn't a topic of application. The Jamaica as you know it is no more. That entire age, epoch, and era is now legally and officially behind us.
Can't be lawfully though. Legally we do a whole heap of things in a them court. But yeah, sir. You get me? And of them kind of paperwork that got embarrassed somehow now with what now bring forward. However, as an organization, do nothing and hurry up and leave this land. Let me hear who I know around here are participating in this thing, because I'm quite familiar with what go on.
And so it is up to us to work together as a people and as a family to build our new glorious community. So as a people on this island, all are eligible and qualified for the benefits of growth and prosperity. This isn't an application process. This is a true transformation for each and every one of us.
Okay, just one more question here. I'm just trying to get it.
Our people like a bum rush.
Can you name the council?
The members of the executive
And
council
contacts, yes.
comprised of, within the current administration, we do see that our dear Nana, Kamina Johnson-Smith, is within the executive council. We see that
foreign
Chief Wallace Sterling from Moortown
Maroon.
is within the executive council. Chief Marcia Douglas from Charlestown.
So I go on my people. Kamina Smith, or Kamina Johnson Smith, that very same foreign lady from the foreign office. Yeah, man. And you're going to hear the Maroons, those Moors that came with Columbus. You understand? And you might just hear another, probably the Rastafari people, let me know it too. I will talk about the brotherhoods, but people not really take it. But talk about the Freemasonic order. Can't say them good or bad, but me I say, it's here. It's been here. And these guys, them so obvious, especially this brother. What me I try say, even with all of what the eye them I do, it could have been constructed in such a way where we as Americans can say, yes, we are such. Now, the other so-called American have to directly declare themselves as only political Americans. This is where it comes down to, But when it's just one voice, then it's tough, because we have even our very own mainlanders and American black people, then I go look and say, hey, them I go try bring division. So this is the result. But a man such as I man just stay resolute, standing on my truth. Above all of this, so I can see it for what it is. Yeah, man. Another Pan-African, agenda. Another Pan-African takeover. This is the Maroons in the people. The very same Maroons where they work with the British, So them man, this very same foreign minister in a bed with a bed. Chief Courier going at this thing too. Let's watch.
Chief Michael Grizzly from Flagstaff, Chief Richard Curry from Occompong, and
Need I say more? Need I say more? Maroons? Need I say usurpation? Need I say, slave catchers now are a regroup for, enslave everyone? What's going on? What is the agenda? People, you are free. You've always been free. You have to just choose to be free.
Chief Labrador from Scotts Hall. All are members of the Executive Council, and with
And I guarantee as we go forward, someone will validate all are of that very same or some form of Freemasonic or lodge organization. I guarantee it.
in Indigenous representation, we recognize that
This is why I'm question these indigenous new thing what the UN bring forward for usurp the original people, what they call Aboriginal. I don't get caught in the bureaucracy with this FBA found. I don't know about these people with this bag of different divisions. Cause I'm not found out, it's questionable the same way. So only because we are maintaining a code, we're not going to talk about I people. You understand? But you see, these people are not my people. They might look like I, but they can't be my people. How can they be? When me I say I'm American here, with this copper color complexion here, been here from time immemorial here, before all foreigners came here. That's my claim. That's our claim. We not claim Africans, so these people can't be my people, irrespective of how them seem, because them have a whole different agenda. Them a construct for them whole thing for, commercial profit and gain. But them have this, illusion what them a bring forward as if it's for the people. Where are the Africans you people are talking about? Where are they? This is not the African continent.
the president of the indigenous community of Jamaica, His Royal Highness Prince Kalonji, is also
What the fuck? I wanna say, President of Indigenous Community of Jamaica is Royal Highness. What you talk about, brethren? Give thanks.
from Scotts Hall. All are members of the Executive Council, and within Indigenous representation, we recognize that the president of the Indigenous community of Jamaica, His Royal Highness Prince Kalonji, is also within that council representing that constituency.
And you say, Your Royal Highness Kalonji, you're talking about Sizzler Miguel Collins?
Correct.
Okay. I am so sorry.
Why? Forgive me. Because I really have to find that funny. What that money know about this thing? Yesterday usurpation. Yesterday usurpation of the information. And it's a beautiful thing, because what it do, it will bring clarity. And this is why I say I claim is superior. Yeah, man. And people like these will give I a chance to manifest what is. Yeah, man. Listen to the people and what they must say I govern this new thing what them come with. Boy, my foreign brethren, them are gonna tear this thing up, man. Yeah, man. Yo, no better. That's why I say I'm gonna play them game there with people, Rasta. What kind of highness way? We do with this king. And they even consult I. Make it even more, easy for a man like me. So I don't even know them. No, them clown you from.
Recognize that the president of the indigenous community of Jamaica is Royal Highness Prince Kalonji.
Big time sellout a go on. They make you and there from all this time I talk about Ahuuakh and we as a people, yes, so you know, say a big time sellout a go on. From me, say foreign minister's office, Kamenia, Johnson Smith. I know a big old scam, big old sellout, big old enslavement. And look for what them say now. Indigenous president. Where? So what to Rastafari movement? And what kind of drum ship are going there? Or the Rasta them now, well, it probably fresh, so make me just be patient. But me I say, where the Rasta them there? You know, so them are come with legality. That's why I'm tear up on a legal processing of people. Because them are come with some legality and I try to say them right on paper and UN give indigenous people right. UN can't give you no right because the human rights is precede that. The human rights was first. So not even gay boy can come talk about them one a kind of right. You understand? And when people stand up for freedom and say, boy, this is how we are deal with them, get caught in the civil process of things, which is the Roman process of things. Keep letting foreign people inside our house. Keep letting foreign people in our business. And we have all kind of, watch me, we have all kind of people we are sell out. I don't know if them not know say I sell them or sell out. I don't know if them not know say, boy, you know, so you gain freedom. You can't gain freedom when you run from here so to some other foreign land called Africa. If you originate from Africa, you can't go back. Because you have a place there. So you can go back. But when you sell out our people, especially the people them when I have a clue, how come you're indigenous now and now say Rasta? What go on there? Oh man, them a jump ship, sir. President of Rastafari now or what? President of indigenous where? Where? Yeah, big time sellout to go on night people. So that's how no one undermine the truth. This is how no one undermine the true Americans here. People don't always hear me say it, you know. You see the moment you realize you're American, you start remove yourself from even being just a Jamaican because laws are there. This is why you see them attack the 1962 Constitution. It's these very Moors, these Maroons, these very same people. Because within that Constitution, there is what is called a Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedom, where guarantee the people's their right and their freedom. So now these group of Maroons, these Moors, these foreign people will look like us, working with some other people. We're supposed to be us. We are sell us out. I come now, I say them want repatriation. So they sell out now, them going to call repatriation. Babylon give them a fat check now, you know. And then trick the world. And I said, oh, this is our repatriation check. When I sell out the people, and I get a check in front the slave them. We are asleep. Eyes. Because even when me I say it this way, people are going to miss it. It's going to go over on the head. Look at the players. How can a man will never even talk about or lobby about or advocate for indigenous? For saying, hey, you're free around here away from all of these things. That man you probably don't even know of AhuuakhIndianNation here. And yeah, what? They're not them thing, you know, obvious. We can say, yeah, man, big time sellout to go on. What you feel like? It's not a diva thing. It's not an entertainment thing. It's not that, man. It's about truth, which is supreme. And when man a jump from them office to other office to other office, then we have to ask questions. We have to ask a whole heap of questions. You understand? And so what are the agenda? Are we American here or are we African? So if you choose to be African, leave this land. This is how we have to stand. All Africans have to leave this land. So this land can heal herself. Yeah, man, with the Americans, we choose to stand this way. Listen to this, mess.
Is also within that council representing that constituency.
And you say, Your Royal Highness Kalanda, you're talking about Sizzler Miguel Collins?
Correct.
Okay. I am so sorry we're out of time. I have about 100 more questions, and so many persons are asking questions, and I want to know more. But as I said, I guess you're going to have to be doing another press conference very soon.
We will be talking all day and every day.
Yes.
This is a new beginning. For those who want to be immediately debriefed on any comments I make, they can simply look for me on Twitter at Chief Samako, or any of the other social medias where we do communicate on. Going forth, we will be in regular communication as a new age is upon us. Blessings to you all, and thank you, Isis,
Thank you
for
so
having me
much.
this day.
You are so welcome. Thank you so much. Wow. Some powerful information coming out there. Heard here, Owen.
Muslim never go hard in my
So that is, I know a lot of people are going to be linking up with Chief Samako on Twitter, on all the social media spaces. But we just want to say,
interesting people. Interesting. Well, I have a next thing for sharing. Salute to my elder brethren, my elder general over there on the European side of things. Yeah, man. Complete respect with power. Yeah, man. Perfect health. Perfect health to all of my elders. Yeah, man. Perfect health to all of my elders out there. Because I must say, the other day, me got get what them call one of them man executive there, We run out your blood test and make them run some things and make sure say this good and that good and you balance certain way. So I'm gonna have to say, for the ones them where reach a certain kind of age, especially when I not push past the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, get on a self-check. Just to make sure, so anything that is there, we just move to it quick and fast, and man can full jar them great grand and these things. Yeah, man. So salute to our elders out there. Complete respect. With power. Yeah, man.
Our Man in Mona, a conversation between Robert A. Hill and Annie Paul. AP, Bobby, you first articulated a certain discomfort with the 1960 Rastafari report put out by the University of the West Indies in 2008 at the Milgram Smith Conference. What led you to have doubts about the report, and what was the general reaction at the conference to your voicing them? IH, I might have started out chipping away at the mythology surrounding the university report, entitled The Rastafari Movement in Kingston, 1960. Today, my research has resulted in the dismantling, root and branch, of the intellectual pretensions of the report, as well as exposure of the massive deception engaged in by all concerned with the report, a deception that until now has gone completely unremarked in the literature. Getting to the bottom or truth of what today stands as an almost canonical university document, more than 50 years after publication, has not been easy, but with patience and considerable effort and determination I have uncovered materials in archives and personal collections that disclose an unvarnished picture. The story that emerges from this research is a disturbing one, indeed. The first articulation of, as you describe it, a certain discomfort with the 1960 Rastafari report, however, long predated the M.G. Smith Conference at UWA in 2008. In 1981, 27 years before the conference, I observed by way of introducing my essay, Dread History, Leonard P. Howell and Millenarian Visions in Early Rastafari Religion in Jamaica, Epoche, Journal of the History of Religions at UCLA, Volume 9, 1981, the following caution. It is necessary at the outset to call into question the semi-canonical status which scholars have conferred on the section of the report by N.G. Smith, Roy Augier, and Rex Nettleford, The Rastafari Movement in Kingston, Jamaica, entitled History of the Movement. An example of the nearly universal acceptance accorded this work is the statement by Barry Shevins that the role played by the first Rastafarians is treated adequately in Smith et al. Thus, engaging with the report in 2008 was by no means something I was attempting for the first time. What was new, however, was the approach. Since the conference was an academic meeting in honor of M.G. Smith, I decided that I would visit Smith's widow, Mary Smith, who lives in Glastonbury, England. I wanted to find out from her what she could tell me about the preparation of the report. I was reminded that, in a meeting held in my office at UCLA in 1978, M.G. Smith, who was then visiting UCLA with his wife, told me that the report was actually dictated to Mary over the course of a single night. How could one ever forget something as amazing as that? Indeed, Smith's statement stayed with me over the years and continued to make me curious about how the process of composition, dictation, transcription, and revision unfolded. Milligram Smith. Just before New Year's in 2007, I spent 3 days with Mary Smith in Glastonbury. During my visit, I interviewed her at some length. The interview covered a lot of ground, including subjects like the response of Jamaicans to the Smiths' arrival in Jamaica in 1952. M.T. Smith and his wife had spent 20 months in the House of Fulani Emirate of Zazzau in northern Nigeria, in 1949 to 1950. After returning to London in late December 1950, M.G. Smith wrote up the results for his Ph.D. thesis as a report to the Colonial Social Science Research Council in the summer of 1951. This work would form the bedrock of his illustrious reputation in the anthropological profession for years to come. I was curious to find out how Jamaicans perceived and responded to their connection with Africa. The result was that I decided to present, as my contribution to the proceedings of the 2008 conference, extracts from my conversation with Mary Smith in December 2007. One of the topics touched upon in the interview was the view I had arrived at by then that the report represented a plural society document, i.e., it reflected Smith's distinctive theory of cultural pluralism in the Caribbean, with its inflections about the clash of cultural segments and the potential that it created for societal breakdown. This seemed fairly obvious to me, for how could it not? Mary Smith strenuously disagreed with my observation, however, and she refused to give an inch. In fact, she wouldn't hear of it. As it turned out, M.G. Smith confirmed the correctness of my view about the plural society underpinning of the report. Thus, in a lengthy letter that I discovered only last year, Smith explained to the anthropologist Melville J. Herskovitz how the report came about. On my return from Evanston and Los Angeles in May 1960, I found a large-scale conspiracy had been uncovered in my absence, and that there was considerable unrest among the unemployed in Kingston, especially among the Rastafari group whom George Simpson had studied in 1955. In June there was further trouble when some racist American Negroes came down to offer a revolt. In our plural society, there being no communication between the Creole middle and lower class, when the opportunity arose I got the college, UCWI, to undertake a study of this Rastafari group, and carried it out with 2 other colleagues, M.G. Smith to Melville J. Herskovitz, Northwestern University, November 19, 1960. Even though Mary Smith and I disagreed on this point, I thought it was important to share this part of our exchange, namely, the status of the report vis-à-vis Smith's plural society theory, with the conference. You will appreciate how dumbfounded I was, therefore, When following my presentation, Roy Augier took the floor and launched into a tirade against what I had read from the transcript of the interview with Mary Smith. I simply could not fathom what he was getting at. What I understood, however, was that he was declaiming that I did not know anything about what I was talking about, that I was talking nonsense. What had set him off, it appeared, was the comment that I had made to the effect that from the text of the report there would seem to have been a division of labor among the three investigators, Smith, Augier, and Nettleford, viz. Augier, the historian largely responsible for the newspaper research appearing in the second chapter on the history of the movement, Nettleford, the researcher of Jamaican dance and folk music responsible for the section on Borough drumming in the third chapter, and Smith himself responsible for the rest of the report. In point of fact, the idea was not mine, it came directly from Mary Smith, who suggested it in the interview. In any case, Augier took serious umbrage at my attribution to him of responsibility for doing the newspaper research for the historical section of the report. Fair enough, if he had not done the newspaper research, he could simply have corrected the mistake. Instead, he went totally off, as anyone who was present in the audience at the conference would tell you. The more significant point, however, is that Augier's attack in reality begged the question: if he had not done any of the newspaper research for the report, what exactly had he done? At this point, what if anything Augier contributed to the report is far from clear. Now, as to what the general reaction at the conference was to my presentation or to Augier's rant, I can't say. I suspect that most people present were left more than a little mystified by the whole thing. 8p. I was at that conference and I remember younger scholars leaping to Augier's defense as if they assumed that he had been wronged and that as one of the authors he should have the definitive last word on anything to do with the report. In April this year, you gave a pretty thorough timeline of events before and immediately after the university published the report in your lecture subtitled "The Half That's Never Been Told." Using a sequence of documentary evidence, you suggested that the report was actually an intelligence document prepared by the anthropologist Milgram Smith, acting covertly on behalf of Northwest Manley, the Premier of Jamaica. The role of his co-authors Rex Nettleford and Roy Augier was less clear-cut. In the lecture you gave at the Institute of Jamaica in August, you were much more definitive. This report is an academic betrayal, you declared. For the benefit of my readers who weren't privy to either of these talks, could you summarize what it is you're saying about the provenance of this foundational text in the discourse of Rastafari? Foundational it has proven to be, indeed, and yet also a betrayal of academic and intellectual transparency. The first problem is the so-called provenance of the report. This survey arose out of letters written to the principal of the UCWI, Professor Arthur Lewis, and to the resident tutor, Extramural Studies, Mr. Rex Nettleford, by members of the Rastafari Brethren living in Kingston, the report claimed. These letters asked the college to assist the Brethren in various ways, especially in the educational field, and by publicizing the truth about the Brethren and their doctrine, page 7. After 5 years of researching the report, I have yet to find any such letters, though I have found numerous letters written by various Brethren, but all of them dated after the commencement of the research on July 5th. In point of fact, there are 4 letters written after the research began but none before the report was published, and none of them asked for any investigation to be pursued or launched. In any case, these letters could not be said to constitute the raison d'etre of the report. It seems odd that we should have a batch of such letters written to the principal, but none of them written prior to the beginning of the research. What I have concluded is that the story of the letters is a fairy tale. It served as a propaganda ploy that was meant to disguise the real motive behind the university's investigation of the Rastafari movement. In other words, the story of the letters never had any foundation in fact. And in any case, if such letters existed, all that the defenders of the report have to do is to produce them. But since you can't produce what doesn't exist, their only resort is to keep repeating the story over and over, as if the mere repetition will make it become true. Meantime, it is worth observing that the report never identifies who the authors of the letters were, nor are any of the texts of the letters themselves made available. Assuming that it was these letters that triggered the university's response, one would think that they were important enough to include the names of the persons who wrote the requests. Put another way, should the omission be explained as a case of typical university condescension toward the self-same Rastafari brethren it claimed to be serving? Let us now connect the two elements that I have identified, namely, first, the mad haste with which the entire exercise was carried out, and, secondly, the explanation provided in the report as to who requested and asked for it to be done. Ronald Trevor Henry dressed in U.S. Air Force uniform. In point of fact, no worse time for launching an investigation of any kind of the Rastafari movement could be imagined or chosen. On June 21, 1960, 2 Royal Hampshire Marines in a combined military police raid were shot and killed in an ambush in the Red Hills. The ambush was carried out by Ronald, aka Reynold, Henry, the son of Reverend Claudius Henry, and members of his 1st Africa Corps who had established a military training camp in a remote area in the Red Hills outside of Kingston. In all, 4 Royal Hampshire Marines were shot and 2 were killed. Henry and a group of his men fled after the ambush and escaped from the cordon, ending up in the Sligoville area of St. Catherine. For the next 6 days they were hunted down in the largest search operation that Jamaica had ever witnessed. Close to 1,000 military and police took part in the search. However, if the true purpose of the report was security-related, then the urgency and haste with which it was undertaken becomes understandable. In my opinion, that was exactly what happened. It was in that sense a classic counterinsurgency operation masquerading as a university-sponsored investigation. And like every counterinsurgency operation, it was accompanied by all of the deception and secrecy that are integral to the craft of counterintelligence. Intelligence was a specialty of M.G. Smith, the main architect of the report. Smith had been trained in military intelligence in World War II, serving with the Canadian Army as a member of the 17th Duke of York's Royal Canadian Hussars, a reconnaissance regiment with the 3rd Canadian Infantry Division, which he enlisted in while still a student at McGill University in Montreal in April 1942. The intake interview with the young recruit records that he was asked by the interviewed to name the area of the military that he wished to serve in. Smith replied, intelligence. Smith's concern with the problem of social unrest was made explicit both in his private correspondence as well as in the report. Writing to his collaborator and fellow anthropologist, Vera Rubin, on June 23, 1960, Smith observed, "Perhaps you've already heard about our minor Castro-type antics in the Red Hills near Kingston this week. It seems as if my predictions about serious trouble in Jamaica may be fulfilled this year or next. The country is in a curious mood." On July 24, 1960, Smith followed up this letter to say that myself and the local Rasta, whose hotels on the Foreshore Road I remember showing you, and Lloyd, Brathwaite, one night, had got to some sort of mutual grips, by way of explaining what he called his unusual silence in the month that had elapsed between letters. With a palpable sense of relief, Smith went on to describe his feeling. "Now I hope that the affair is over for me, but can see further interruptions from time to time. The fieldwork is done, the report written, revised, and sent to the printers. With luck it should be on sale this Friday, 30th. These antics explain my silence, for which apologies, M.G. Smith to Vera Rubin, July 24, 1960. Those were some antics. But a month later, during which time Smith was involved as the government's chief go-between with the various Rastafarian communities, Smith's mood swung from positive to negative. "I shall be going for a few days to the North Coast," he wrote to inform Rubin, "to rest and clear my mind. For the past 5 or 7 weeks, this Rastafari business has simply run me into the ground." He poured out his frustration and his sense that he was misused. "Hitherto, I have been unable to get any sort of action taken to forestall an increasingly explosive situation. Nothing can be more frustrating than futile knowledge in this condition. One sees the signs of a social breakdown, and sees too some of the measures necessary to forestall or reduce it, but one is also quite incapable of getting anybody to believe these things or act accordingly. Moreover, when the breakdown is at hand, I am the man who gets landed with the job of patching and stalling. M. G. Smith to Vera Rubin, August 20th, 1960. The whole point of the investigation was to find a way to bring about peace. If pacification of the Rastafari movement was the goal, and it clearly was, the path chosen was political cooptation of the brethren. The strategy was enunciated and contained in the topmost recommendation of the report. The government of Jamaica should send a mission to African countries to arrange for immigration of Jamaicans. Representatives of Rastafari brethren should be included in the mission, page 38. The strategy of cooptation, however, was contingent upon the government of Jamaica sanctioning and adopting it. This was the explanation for the report being sent to Premier Manley on July 20th, as the letter of transmittal from the principal to Manley made a point of stressing. The Rastafari movement is large, and in a state of great unrest, Lewis wrote Manley, adding its problems require priority treatment. The way forward would be dependent on the action of the Manley and the government. Though the movement has no single leader, or group of leaders, it is willing to produce a small group of prominent representatives to discuss with the government the recommendations contained in this report. I very much hope that you may be able to arrange such a meeting at the earliest possible opportunity. Based on the evidence, it is clear that the impetus for the report originated not from Rastafarians writing letters to the principal. When has the university ever bestirred itself on the basis of appeals from the downtrodden, but came from an agreement worked out between Manley, Smith, and Lewis? Why should a piece of university research, one that had been supposedly undertaken at the request of Rastafari brethren, be prefaced by a letter directed to the Premier of Jamaica and submitted before it was released to the public? One can be quite certain that none of the brethren were granted the privilege of seeing the report before its publication. Premier Manley was in possession of the manuscript of the report for a full 5 days before he returned it to Lewis. It was only after Manley had approved it and the manuscript was received back that it was taken to the printer to be published. Nettleford was the one responsible for taking the manuscript to the printer and overseeing its publication. A month and a half after the report was published, Smith informed Vera Rubin in New York, "Here the Rastafari pot continues to boil, but I think it's more manageable now, although I expect some organized violence when the Henry trial comes up." M. G. Smith to Vera Rubin, September 14, 1960. When I interviewed Mary Smith at her home in Glastonbury, England, in December 2007, I asked her whether her husband had met with N.W. Manley to discuss his plan for embarking on the investigation of the Rastafari movement. After explaining to me what a close family friend her husband was of the Manleys, for example, she told me, as a young man M. G. Smith spent summer holidays with the Manley family. She confirmed that Smith met with Manley in the run-up to the report. "Very much so," she said. That was one thing Mike said at the start. He said, "If we're going to make recommendations, we have got to be sure they can be carried out. If we make recommendations and the government says we can't do it, then we're in trouble, not the scholars, the government is in trouble." So before he worked out with Rex and Augia what recommendations they would make, he went and saw Norman and discussed that with him. Very much so, we had to, that was essential. And they agreed on what the government could undertake and what it couldn't. In fact, the government was very anxious to help. Norman was very sympathetic, and I think the sort of thing they would have done was to emphasize anything connected with education, training, skills, etc. To make sure all of that was very clearly set out. The recommendations were cleared with the government before the pamphlet was printed. From its very inception, Manley knew every detail of the university's plans, which were worked out in advance and in extremely close consultation between them. The fact that he was given the report in manuscript and had it for 5 days to study before it was released to the printer explains, moreover, how it was that Manley was able to issue a public statement the day after the release of the report. The report, as published in the Gleaner, August 3, 1960, stated. The Honourable Norman Manley, Premier, will meet a deputation from the leaders of the Rastafari movement to discuss migration of Jamaicans back to Africa. The government, he said, accepted in principle the recommendation that a mission should go to Africa to investigate the possibilities of migration. The full text of the Gleaner report appears in the addendum. A basic question that imposes itself at this point is, did Principal Lewis or any of the university team inform members of the Rastafari groups with whom they met on July 4, 1960, at the Jonestown Elementary School, that the planning of the investigation had been worked out in close consultation with the Premier and that the report was to be submitted prior to its release to the government of Jamaica? It does not require a great deal of imagination to anticipate the uproar among the brethren that would have followed such a disclosure that night. In fact, if the brethren had been told any of this, the entire investigation would have been stopped in its tracks before it could get off the ground. It is doubtful that the university researchers would have been allowed access to the various Rastafarian camps had it been known beforehand who they were working for. In other words, the investigation was only able to proceed on the basis of a serious deception, namely, withholding of a key piece of information that was deliberately kept hidden from the brethren. Instead, the Rastafari brethren were misled and made to believe, like the public in general, that the initiative for the investigation had originated with the brethren. Such a deception constituted a betrayal of trust and a serious breach of intellectual honesty and academic transparency. Beyond the supposed threat to peace that the Rastafari brethren posed, there was a larger threat to security that haunted the report, the spectre of communist subversion. It was this spectre of black nationalism, in the form of Rastafarianism, making common cause with the Marxism that Smith found deeply unnerving. According to the report, for Jamaican leftists, the violent part of the Rastafari spectrum is a gift. Capitalist, bourgeoisie, and proletariat can be directly translated into white, brown, and black. Revolution becomes redemption with repatriation as the issue provoking bloodshed. The Marxist vanguard wears a Nyabingi cloak. In our survey, we encountered certain groups among which the Marxist interpretation and terminology predominated over the racial-religious. Events in Cuba, China, Egypt, and elsewhere endow the Marxist analysis with a pragmatic validity and power. Insofar as this political philosophy employs the ideology of Rastafari racism, its spread throughout the bulk of the population is assured unless government takes positive steps to meet the legitimate needs of the lower classes, including the Rastafari group. The choice before Jamaica is that between social reform which is planned, peaceful and rapid on the one hand, or changes of a different sort. It is certain that Jamaican society cannot continue in its present form. Since economic development presumes social stability, this means that any successful development depends on an intelligent program of social reform. The recent spread of Rastafari doctrines among educated middle-class youth is largely due to the appeals of ganja and Marxism, but this spread will surely continue so long as Jamaican society fails to provide the young with significant ideals of social justice for which to strive, and opportunities for their achievement. pp. 25-26. The Jamaican government has been pressing ahead with negotiations to get the mission to Africa underway. Its major difficulties have come from precisely that militant group of Rastafarians who strongly demanded the college survey and who have obvious Marxist interests. As the college report stated, the Marxist vanguard wears a Nyabingi cloak, rebellion becomes redemption, with repatriation as the issue provoking bloodshed. The current strategy is thus perfectly clear. Either before the mission goes to Africa, or at such time afterwards as seems most propitious, a violent uprising will be organized and justified on a number of ad hoc grounds. For instance, it may be said that the mission was framed by government, in that it contained the wrong sort of people or advisors, went to the wrong sort of places for the wrong reasons, or at the wrong times. It may also be claimed that government is oppressing the black population, especially the Rastafarians. Already the pattern of violence suggests that a suitable occasion will be selected for a demonstration in sufficient force to create a major public disturbance, perhaps shortly after or before parallel disturbances take place in the country parts. It is of cardinal importance to distinguish sharply the Marxist-oriented Rastafarians from others who lack this orientation. On my reckoning, even allowing for growth of Marxist influences in this movement in Kingston since August, it does not control more than 1/3 of the urban Rastafarians. However, this segment is active and effectively led. It is also highly intelligent. M. G. Smith, Race and Politics in Jamaica, unpublished Ms., January 1961. Smith never identified any of those he termed the Marxist-oriented Rastafarians, so it is unclear how much weight or reliance one should place on the existence of this category or even what exactly Smith meant by it. Likewise, the violent social blow-up that Smith kept anticipating and envisioning never materialized. The closest thing was the Coral Gardens incident, which took place on Thursday, April 12, 1963, when a group of young Rastafarian males, following prolonged harassment by the police, acting at the behest of wealthy developers and landowners in the vicinity of Rose Hall and the newly built Half Moon Hotel, to block their access to land they had been cultivating, went on a rampage to exact retribution against the police and property in the area. What Smith had in mind, however, was something that was much more general, something on the scale of a mass upheaval or insurrection in Jamaica. AP, isn't it true that the report in question actually makes an important intervention into how Rastafarians who were the butt of severe social scorn and prejudice were to be treated? It made the important point that Rastas were not to be feared and reviled or treated as enemies of the state. Isn't this why the report was eagerly consumed by the public? In other words, even if we accept your reading of the report as an intelligence tool, we have to admit that it has over the years done a lot of good, right? What you describe is a fairy tale. It sounds like an ex post facto rationalization of the report, an attempt at redeeming what is a seriously flawed document with a sort of virtuous outcome. To believe that it was the report that brought about the change that you suggest is to inflate the influence of the report out of all proportion to what actually occurred. It wasn't the report that brought about the change, it was the Rastafarian movement that brought about the change, not the university report. The Rastafarian Brethren seized the report and converted its recommendation for a mission to Africa into a tremendous counter-propaganda weapon. It was the intuitive genius of the Brethren that wrested control of the narrative in the ensuing ideological struggle. The biggest changes were still to come, however. The incredible music that poured forth in the 60s, all in the name of Jah Rastafari, swept everything and everyone before it. With the historic visit of Emperor Haile Selassie to Jamaica in April 1966, the winning of the battle for public opinion was complete. Moreover, the transformation you describe resulted from the broader social and cultural transformation that Jamaica underwent starting in the 60s. The process ran wide and deep and helped to push the entire country into a radical political direction. Something of this sweep and magnitude could not have resulted from the publication, no matter how important, of a 54-page university document. Finally, while it is true that the publication of the report caused something of a sensation at the time in Jamaica, both in terms of demand for copies of the report and the coverage that it engendered in the local press, it has to be remembered that the public reaction at the time was far from positive, as Rex Nettleford was careful to note in his book Mirror, Race, Identity, and Protest in Jamaica, 1970. The publication of the report was also greeted with considerable criticism, most especially from the pen of Monsignor Gladstone Wilson, whose role in this matter of the university report has been kept hidden from view until now. AP, another point you make in your critique is that the research conducted for the report was not only done in 2 weeks or 9 working days but was also restricted to Kingston, ignoring important Rasta groups such as Claudius Henry's. Could you explain the significance of these omissions? In the press release issued at the very inception of the research, the university announced that the report would be completed and released in 2 weeks. A copy of the press release is reprinted in the addendum. The press release followed the meeting at the Jonestown Elementary School on July 4, 1960, at which the principal of the university, W. Arthur Lewis, met with a group of brethren, whereupon it was agreed to proceed with the investigation. The research team embarked on field work on the following morning, July 5, 1960. And on July 20, 1960, the report was completed and submitted to Premier Manley for his review. That makes 15 days between the inception of research and the formal transmittal of the report, but 14 days, if we allow a day for Lewis to prepare the letter of transmittal and physically submit the manuscript to Manley. Now, what kind of serious researcher or academic would announce at the very outset that such an important piece of work would be started and completed in 2 weeks? Who in their right mind, before any actual work was begun, would commission such an investigation and announce that the finished report would be issued in 2 weeks? In fact, the draft of the report was presented to a follow-up meeting with brethren at the Jonestown Elementary School on the afternoon of July 15, 1960. What this means is that the report didn't take 2 weeks, but, rather, it took 10 days to complete from start to finish, or 9 days, if the actual day of the second meeting held on July 15th is subtracted. Either way, the whole thing reminds one of a 9-day wonder or a 9-day creation story. If you add the missing so-called letters of the Rastafari brethren to the principal of the university, what you get is a sort of immaculate conception of the report. The question that the timeline obliges us to ask is, what was the need for such insane speed in producing a report on the Rastafari movement in the first place? The Rastafari movement was one of the most complicated, deeply rooted, and socially contentious problems ever to have confronted Jamaica. And you are going to embark on a study of its history, organization, aims, etc., and get it done in 9 days, 10 days, even 14 days. One is forced to ask the question, what's going on here? What could possibly explain such haste? One aspect of the breakneck speed with which the report was initiated and completed was, ironically, the informal nature of the entire procedure. There was no letter of commission issued to the team by the principal, who, according to Roy Orgia's testimony, simply telephoned him in his office and summoned him to the principal's office one Friday evening, where he found G. Smith and Rex Nettleford already present. When the report was completed, there was no letter accompanying it. Likewise, there was no letter from the principal acknowledging receipt of the report. Whether such informality was simply a function of haste or the way the university conducted its business, the whole procedure does strike one as rather peculiar. That was the source of the initial skepticism that led me to question the report. I began by asking the question, quite legitimately, in my opinion, what sort of reliance can be placed on the outcome of an investigation conducted in such extraordinary haste? The report itself was a bit of a hodgepodge, 7 chapters of 32 pages total, 31 pages, if the single page of recommendations is deducted, dictated over the space of a single night, and the whole padded out with 4 appendices, 3 consisting of documents from other sources and 1 appendix that appears to have been written independently of the report, and which replicated material repeated in the body of the report. The reckoning used to assess the length of time, 2 weeks, it took for the report to be completed overlooks something that was never mentioned in the report. The fact is that Smith had been involved with a top-secret Rastafari Rehabilitation Committee set up by the Minister of Home Affairs in early May 1960. Shortly after returning to Jamaica following a month-long visit to the University of California, Los Angeles, Smith was awakened by an official messenger. He wrote to tell his friend David Lowenthal about it. I'm taking about a week to unwind, pick up local threads and start new ones. Yesterday the Home Affairs Ministry woke me up to say could I come on a committee to plan Rastafari rehabilitation. But really, as I wish to point out, it's not only the Rastas who want rehabilitation, but all of us, beginning with Issa, Manley, and Company, M. G. Smith to David Lowenthal, May 12, 1960. On the same day that Smith wrote this letter, the American Consul General in Kingston, Robert G. McGregor, was summoned to a meeting with the Minister of Home Affairs, William Seabright. In a memorandum for the US State Department on the subject of public order in Jamaica, McGregor described the meeting. I called on the Minister of Home Affairs, the Honourable William Seabright, on May 10th. The minister launched immediately into a discussion of the Rastafarian movement, this being uppermost in his mind when I called. Ever since he took over the ministry last fall, the minister said that the Rastafarian movement has been an increasing security threat in Jamaica. In closing this part of the conversation, the minister said that a committee had been set up to consider ways and means of dealing long range with the Rastafarian element. The government recognized that there are many sociological factors involved, and that it is not sufficient to control the situation solely by repressive police measures, but rather to shatter the organization by reforms leading to the social rehabilitation of the elements of which the movement is composed. M.G. Smith was appointed vice chair of the committee, with Monsignor Gladstone Wilson as chairman. The first meeting of the committee, which took place on May 20th, 1960, was duly reported onto David Lowenthal. Funny things are happening here. The Rastas have been swiping dynamite from various builders. The PFM, People's Freedom Movement, boys, or some other, have been burning down sugarcanes in Veer, Monimusk, etc., and I suspect that my prophecy of a bust-up locally may be fulfilled inside 2 years, perhaps this year, perhaps next month. The place has a curious surrealist mood. This is just between us, but the Rastafari Problem Committee, which is most hush-hush, met last Friday, May 20th, for the first time. Minister Seabright decided to address us, and duly blew up the churches for failing to convert, proselytize, or otherwise demobilize the Rastas, who seem to be rather more militant at the moment. M.G. Smith to David Lowenthal, May 26, 1960. Smith had been conducting research in West Kingston for this most hush-hush committee when the crisis in the Red Hills broke on June 21, 1960. After spending over a month intensively investigating the Rastafari movement in Kingston, Smith resigned his position as vice chairman of the Rehabilitation Committee. There was a change of committee, but it was still the same government that Smith would be working for. Abandoning his position with the Seabright Committee, Smith changed course and reconstituted an emergency intervention under the guise and cover of the university. By then, he had already done the research that he would incorporate and include in the university report. That was both how and why the university report could be completed in 2 weeks and why the focus of the report had to be limited to Kingston, rural units, whether branches of the EWF, Ethiopian World Federation, or unaffiliated brethren, have not formed part of this survey. Page 32. Working for the top-secret Rastafari Rehabilitation Committee, Smith was insistent on being given access to the security files on the movement. Thus, a comparison of the data contained in the university report with data from the special branch reports of the Jamaican police force, found in the National Archives in Great Britain, shows that Smith had obtained access to special branch reports on the movement. In this connection, Colin Clark's Field Journal records the following revealing anecdote. In May 1960, soon after his return from the US, Mike M.G. Smith was invited onto a government Rastafari Problem Committee with Monsignor Gladstone Wilson. Seabright, the Minister of Home Affairs, promised to make available all the necessary detailed information that could be provided, but his offer was immediately blocked, for security reasons, by Hambone Hamilton, the acting permanent secretary. Mike walked out. This explains how Smith was able to portray the history of the movement and its leaders working in such a short period of time. The section of the report on Leonard P. Howell, for example, drew extensively on reports of the Special Branch Department. In 1960, and for many years following, little or no information had been published about Howell. There was no way that in 2 weeks the information about Howell contained in the university report could have been gathered by any researcher. It was simply not possible. Ironically, M.G. Smith had earlier in the 1950s carried out extensive fieldwork in rural Jamaica, with the results being published in his report on labor supply in rural Jamaica, 1956. Smith had encountered Rastafari brethren in the rural areas of Jamaica in the course of this research. The 1960 report makes no attempt to explain or justify its delimited focus on urban Kingston, other than to plead, as if in extenuation, that it was a rapid survey among the Rastafari brethren of Kingston during the fortnight beginning on July 4, 1960, page 7. Reverend Claudius V. Henry holding his rod of correction, Harlem, New York, ca. 1957. In Chapter 4 of the report, the extraordinary disclosure was made that the team had no contact with the followers of the Reverend Claudius Henry, who are, in any case, a small minority of the Kingston Brethren, page 25, this despite the fact that it was Reverend Claudius Henry and his son and their followers who were responsible for initiating the very crisis that brought about the investigation by the university. The majority of Reverend Henry's followers were made up of cane cutters from Veer in southern Clarendon, a fact that the report acknowledges. It appears that whereas the Reverend Henry's activities have had a profoundly disturbing effect on the urban Rastafari brethren, most of these remained aloof, and that the African Reformed Church drew the bulk of its following from the rural areas. p. 32. Note the report's exhortation calling for. Rapid work by the security forces. Shortly after the report was issued, a female member of Reverend Henry's African Reformed Church, Odina Erlington of 13 Acacia Park Road, Kingston, wrote a letter addressed to the government asking for the government to include Reverend Henry as a member of the forthcoming government-sponsored mission to Africa. The letter was dated August 7, 1960, and was sent to the principal. The letter was passed to M.G. Smith for his advice on how it should be handled. Would you believe that the university turned the letter over to the Ministry of Home Affairs? Turning the letter over to the Ministry of Home Affairs was tantamount to handing it over to the police. It might be a small matter in the bigger picture, but it is revealing how the university saw its role. Here we see the university acting as informer for the government's security apparatus. 8p. Are you suggesting, Bobby, that Milligram Smith might have been an undercover agent for the British government? What are your reasons for thinking so? IH. No, I am not suggesting that Smith might have been an undercover agent for the British government. What I am suggesting is far more interesting than any kind of facile conspiracy theory. What the evidence clearly indicates is that Smith at the time thought that he could do intelligence all by his lonesome, like a one-man intelligence bureau. Of course, this was before he went on to become the chief intelligence guru to Prime Minister Michael Manley's government of democratic socialism in the 1970s. In this latter capacity, Smith would play a leading role in overseeing intelligence and security generally for Manley. In particular, Smith was one of the key architects of the infamous gun court, established under the Draconian Gun Crime Act, March 1974, made equally notorious by the bizarre use of red paint in the holding cells meant to disorient the prisoners. This was followed by the imposition of the state of public emergency, June 1976, and the controversial security forces operation that became known as the Green Bay Massacre, January 1978. In a strictly technical sense, and borrowing the language of the craft of intelligence, the university report belongs to the category of what are called covert operations, the definition of which aim to fulfill their mission objectives without any parties knowing who sponsored or carried out the operation, and are operations planned and executed as to conceal the identity of or permit plausible denial by the sponsor. In this context, the university performed the facilitating role of a typical front organization, part of the necessary disguise to conceal the true purpose of the operation. Recently, Professor Colin Clark has shared with me notes from his field journal, and what the notes reveal bears this out. Clark was a PhD student doing research at the time for what eventually became his magisterial Kingston, Jamaica, Urban Development and Social Change, 1692 to 2002, 1975, 2nd ed., 2006. During his fieldwork in Jamaica, he became a friend of M.G. Smith, who acted, in turn, as his informal supervisor. Here are Colin Clark's notes from his meeting with Smith at his home on the Mona campus on July 15, 1961. Seabright's visit to Mike Smith's house was retold to me at the end of a long day's discussion about my research, with Mike filling me in about what he knew. It was highly confidential, and I don't think either of us held back. But I was tired and a bit bemused by the evening. Mary joined us for a drink, and then the Seabright tale came out from Mike, with Mary chipping in. Seabright was worried by what he thought he had been told to do, and turned to Mike for advice on his own initiative. Mike told me how Home Affairs Minister Seabright had arrived at their home, and, bewildered, claimed that he has been ordered by Premier Manley to bring out the troops, and to be prepared to shoot it out in the country, in Frome and other places. Mike's checking proves that Seabright has completely misunderstood Manley, and Mike advises inaction. In fact, it was Minister Seabright who provided the link that connected the Brethren with the university. Around June 12, 1960, as a result of numerous letters he received from the leader of the United Races Organization, URO, one Mr. Dabney, Seabright convened a meeting at the office of the Ministry of Home Affairs. The problems that the URO was seeking assistance for from the ministry were threefold, viz. Recognition of the members of Rastafari by the government. Work to aid the members to get employment, to aid them in their development of their skills. Approved centre or centres in various parts of the island, where the members may dwell, worship and live. The verbatim transcript of the meeting reveals that as the meeting was wrapping up, Minister Seabright directed that the Brethren prepare for a follow-up meeting with him by taking certain steps. The transcript was prepared by one Joseph Royler Sullivan, an Irish Canadian who came to Jamaica, he claimed, to collect material for a book on the Rastafari movement, but was soon deported by the government as an undesirable, Canadian undesirable here. Daily Gleaner, July 16, 1960. Seabright told the Brethren, "The next step is that I want to be assured that the order, URO as the presumed representatives of all Rastas, is taken seriously." Seabright then went on to specify what he meant. "So I suggest that a meeting, or series of meetings, be set up with other people, of merit and presumed influence, who also are interested in the problems of the Rastas, at which time or times an agenda or point program can be set up. Then, return again for a meeting here to discuss the matter and the basic needs to a further conclusion. Meeting at Headquarters House, Ministry of Home Affairs, Kingston, between Honourable W. Seabright, Minister, and Mr. B. St. J. Hamilton, Acting Permanent Secretary, and Joseph Royler Sullivan, in attendance by invitation of Dabney, Lloyd Aarons, Rastafari, Mr. Dabney, United Races Orgism, CA the 12th of June 1960. Seabright's reference to other people, of merit and presumed influence, who also are interested in the problems of the Rastas, was code for university people. Seabright was steering the Brethren toward the university. After all, he was already knowledgeable of M.G. Smith's role as deputy chairman of the top-secret Rastafari Rehabilitation Committee, so it was only logical that Seabright should have turned to the university to provide guidance to the Brethren. This was how, on June 25, 1960, Rex Nettleford, resident tutor of the Extramural Studies Department, was able to inform the principal, W. Arthur Lewis, that he had met with Dabney, the URO leader. "I did meet with Mr. Dabney, who styles himself the Secretary General and Minister of the Pen for the United Races Organ," Nettleford wrote Lewis. Nettleford outlined the substance of the conversation with the URO. What they want us to do seems to fall under two broad headings. To provide a meeting place where they can hold their conventions so as to derive some benefit from the intellectual influence of the college. To carry out some research into their movement with a view to providing the public with the true facts as to the nature, aims, and objects of the movement and different branches. I think I was successful in telling him that we could not grant the first request, but could work in collaboration with the Social Welfare Commission, whose officer was also present, to help find a meeting place in town. Mr. Dabney agreed that this would be better. I, however, took the opportunity to tell him that we intended to start very soon on number 2, and I got from him a promise to give us his cooperation to introduce us to members of other groups and to provide us with all the information that will help in such an inquiry. The speed with which Nettleford pounced on Dabney's second suggestion was stunning, when contrasted with the hesitancy and tentativeness of his response to Dabney's first request. The question it raises is exactly who was inviting whom. Was Dabney inviting the university, or was it the other way around? This much is clear. Nettleford seized upon Dabney's idea for a study because plans were already underway. This is confirmed in Nettleford's follow-up memorandum to Principal Lewis dated July 1, 1960. Dr. M. G. Smith, Dr. Roy Augier and myself have been meeting to plan a survey which we hope to conduct among the Rastafaris. After careful consideration, we all feel that the best line of approach would be for you first to meet with a group of Rastafari leaders representing the different branches or orders of the movement, and introduce us as accredited representatives of the college. Then a press release could follow, stressing the fact that this survey is being done at the request of the Rastas themselves. We would then start the field work, basing our inquiry on the following categories of assessment: ideology, character and constitution of each group, interrelationships, i.e. between different branches of the movement, needs and capacities, i.e. with a view to determining the nature and scope of the educational help we can give them. The link between the URO and the university was not only facilitated by Minister of Home Affairs. In a very real sense, what, ultimately, would result in the form of the university report had its genesis in the Ministry of Home Affairs and its overriding concern in achieving the pacification of the Rastafari movement in Jamaica. Thus, we see that the first three items of the agenda as enunciated by Nettleford in his second memorandum to Lewis bore little or no resemblance to what Dabney and the URO had requested. The university at no time, either then or subsequently, provided any of the educational help that it promised or that the brethren had requested. On the contrary, the agenda reveals a series of what are classic intelligence categories, exactly the sort of political intelligence that security agencies specialize in gathering and analyzing. It was not until one comes to the fourth item on the agenda that the concerns expressed by the Rastafari brethren is addressed, tacked onto the agenda of the study as a sort of afterthought. The fundamental division of the two sets of concerns was starkly presented from the very outset. On the evidence provided by Nettleford's memorandum, what we have is a political intelligence survey of the Rastafari movement in Kingston concealed behind the smokescreen of a social humanitarian endeavor. Right from the start, the report was a covert operation aimed at stemming the insurgency of Rastafari in Jamaica. It was in that sense a classic counterinsurgency operation. The emphasis throughout on the need for swift action was also brought to bear on the principal. We see him being nudged by Nettleford in the days leading up to the meeting with representatives of Rastafari leaders. We had thought of bringing the leaders up to see you, Nettleford informs Lewis on Friday, July 1st, but some of them have since asked for you to meet them at the Jonestown Government School on Monday, the 4th of July at 8:00 p.m. I would very much like to see you to discuss this so that I can get word to them by Sunday evening. Ironically, it was the very group that the Minister of Home Affairs had steered toward the university that had added to the pressure for speed. It is, of course, important that we get as wide a representation as possible, Nettleford told Lewis, since we have reason to believe that a certain branch is eager to take over active leadership of the entire movement and that this bid for power is resented by other branches. It so happens, Nettleford revealed, that this power-seeking branch is the United Races Organization, one of the three groups that have been asking us for help. The curious idea that it was within the province of the university to act as some kind of umpire or gatekeeper, adjudicating rival claims among various factions, each vying for influence within the movement, was most extraordinary. Apparently, Nettleford and his colleagues saw nothing wrong with the idea. In any case, how, in the first place, did they know that a certain branch is eager to take over active leadership of the entire movement and that this bid for power is resented by other branches? It would suggest that there was already in existence among them a rudimentary network collecting and analyzing intelligence on the movement. All of the evidence points towards Smith as the source of the network of informants. Of the 19 groups interviewed for the report, The fieldwork records indicate that Smith alone was responsible for data collection from a total of 16, with Nettleford and Auger responsible for a paltry 3 between the two of them. Overwhelmingly, it was Smith's network of informants which provided almost entirely the bulk of the data drawn upon in the report. In my view, Smith's service, both to Norman Manley in the 50s and early 60s, and later in the 70s as an official advisor in the administration of his son, Michael, signifies the development of a system of political intelligence under local control. It marks the beginning of the process when Jamaica went from being a colonial dependency under the tutelage of the British government to asserting its own independent political judgment on intelligence matters. Smith's role was emblematic of this crucial moment of transition in the security apparatus during the process of decolonization. When seen in this context of the changeover in the local intelligence assessment process, the report of 1960 falls into place as one of a series of documents that Smith prepared over the years for Norman Manley and the People's National Party. The first document was prepared in 1954 following Smith's return to Jamaica. We have not been able to find it, though we know of its existence from notes made by Smith's wife, Mary, in his archive. The second document was Smith's 1956 study, a report on labor supply in rural Jamaica, 1956, which brought forth from Chief Minister Norman Manley the following commendation. You certainly have done a tremendous job. The appendices must rank as the most detailed survey of basic economic conditions in rural areas that has ever been undertaken. I think the whole work will be very valuable to government, and I thank you most warmly and congratulate you on it. N.W. Manley to Dr. M. G. Smith, March 13, 1956. The third document was prepared the following year, entitled Politics and Society in Jamaica, 1957, a portion of which was to be published 4 years later as the Plural Framework of Jamaican Society, in the British Journal of Sociology, Volume 12, Number 3, September 1961, 249 to 262. In my opinion, the fourth document in this series of documents that Smith prepared for N.W. Manley was the 1960 report on the Rastafari movement in Kingston, Jamaica. The fifth report was Smith's secret 1961 essay prepared at the request of Manley entitled Race and Politics in Jamaica. What I am saying is that the university report was not a one-off document. When it is viewed in the proper context of the close Manley-Smith political relationship, its true meaning becomes clear. It was no accident, therefore, that the report, as soon as it was completed, was addressed in the first instance to N.W. Manley and rushed to him for his approval. In other words, right from the beginning the real audience of the report was Manley. It was neither the Rastafari brethren nor the public that was its primary audience. By September 1960, however, only a month since its appearance, Premier Manley began to express serious misgivings about the report and what it had led to. He confided some of these thoughts in a meeting with the American Consul General. At the same time, he revealed what a heavy toll the report had exacted upon M. G. Smith. In a dispatch on September 6, 1960, the U.S. official commented that Mr. Manley appears to have changed his mind in the last month regarding the usefulness of the UCWA report. According to the report, Mr. Manley described the report as an irresponsible document and said that Mike Smith, one of the 3 authors, had got himself so involved emotionally that he had had to disassociate himself from the subject. Mr. Manley was unhappy that the university had been affording Rastafaris radio time, saying that all this public attention was merely stirring them up. Manley by this time had begun to have not only second thoughts, but also that he had been lured into a trap. The predicament that he found himself in had everything to do with the decision to try to form a party to go to Africa to explore immigration possibilities. At the same time, Manley still clung to the belief that it is the only way to bring these people down to earth. Reported McGregor. He, Manley, is not sanguine that the mission will accomplish anything, but he would rather have the Rastafaris emote in public rather than conspire in private. Foreign Service Dispatch, American Consulate, Kingston, Jamaica, Dispatch number 84, to Department of State, Washington, D.C., September 6, 1960. It is frankly amazing how many people have been fooled by the report's apparent semblance of academic legitimacy. Two widely separated examples will suffice to show how persons have been duped into thinking that the research was legitimate. The first example was provided by Professor George Eaton Simpson, who was the author of the first two serious academic studies of the Rastafari movement in Jamaica, both of which were published in 1955. The Rastafari Movement in Jamaica, A Study of Race and Class Conflict, Social Forces, Volume 34, Number 2, and Political Cultism in West Kingston, Social and Economic Studies, Volume 4, Number 2. Smith acknowledged the importance and value of Simpson's research. Simpson's early work, declared the report's introduction, enabled the present survey to proceed far more rapidly and effectively than would have been possible otherwise. pp. 6-7. As soon as he heard about the university study, Simpson, who was then engaged in his own field research in Trinidad, contacted the principal of the university and offered to assist with the investigation. The principal acknowledged Simpson's offer of assistance with a two-sentence letter dated July 19, 1960. I enclose a press release which says what we are doing with the Rastafaris. It was good of you to say that you might be available for a short time, but I think we will be able to manage, since what they are asking for seems fairly straightforward. What Lewis was undoubtedly referring to as fairly straightforward was the Rastafari Brethren's demand for repatriation to Africa. Before coming to Jamaica to take up his position as principal, Lewis served for the previous 5 years as economic advisor to the government of Ghana. Surveying the situation in Africa, Lewis was clearly sanguine that migration to Africa was feasible. If anything, the problem was not at the African end, it was to be found in Jamaica. What his letter to Simpson reveals is that the report was not undertaken as an impartial investigation so much as it was the means of advancing a policy recommendation that had been decided upon in advance, with the report serving as academic wrapping. A second person who took the university investigation at face value and failed to recognize the nature of what was being carried out was one Orlando Patterson. In an extensive interview with David Scott published recently in the journal Small Axe, The Paradox of Freedom, an interview with Orlando Patterson, Small Axe, Volume 17, Number 1, March 2013, Number 40, 96-242, Patterson describes how he offered also to assist with the investigation. Unlike Simpson, however, Patterson's offer did not receive any acknowledgement, and to this day he still resents the apparent indifference shown to his offer of assistance. The relevant portion of Patterson's reminiscence shows just how little he knew or understood about the reality behind the report. DS. In the wake of the Claudius Henry events, famously there was a report authored by M. G. Smith, Milligram, Roy Augier, and Rex Nettleford. OP. Oh yes. I was at university then. DS. Exactly. These were all university lecturers you would have known. What is your memory of the publication of the report? OP. I was a little disappointed not to have been asked to participate in that exercise because I knew more about it than any of them. I was down there, in the areas studied, before that report. DS. So by 1960 you had already generated a distinct interest in Rastafari. OP. Oh yes. I had gone down at the height of all the newspaper reports. So when I heard that there was going to be this report, I remember writing to Milligram, who was the anthropologist who taught me sociology, and I told him I was familiar with the area and if I could be of help in any way I'd love to help. They did it over the course of the summer, and I never heard back from them. And the report was very much a quickie report. But I was a little cheesed off that they had the historian, Roy Augier. I don't know what he knew about the subject. But I was just a humble undergraduate, so. DS. But what was your impression of the selection of the folk who were to conduct the research? I gather that Rastafarians had approached Arthur Lewis, insisting that something be done because they were getting a bad name in connection with violence. So the university responded. And presumably Milligram, as the senior anthropologist, was tasked by Lewis to lead the research and select his co-researchers. OP. I don't know who selected them. I think it may have been done at the university level, because Milgram would not necessarily have selected Augier and Nettleford. DS, why not? OP, because Milgram was a serious anthropologist who was very skeptical about political types. Milgram would have seen this as a scholarly activity, and he would have wanted some other social scientists to be involved. So the composition was very carefully done to include Rex, who was already Mr. Black identity. Certainly he was emerging as such. He was also trained in political science and was very keen on promoting the African base of Jamaican culture. DS, so your sense was that it was politically directed from above, because had Milgram been able to shape it himself, it wouldn't have taken the form it did. OP, I think it was certainly done with the advice of the university authorities, and it was seen as a document that could be very important. It took more the form of what the British would call a royal commission. We have that tradition of royal commissions. So while you may say they were all academics, Rex would represent the politically, culturally important person. And who knows? Maybe they felt that they would get more of a response from that group. AP, you also question the role that Mortimer Plano played in instigating the university to undertake the report and suggest that he was promoted by university scholars as a central leading figure beyond his actual importance in the Rastafari movement. Could you expand on your reasons for claiming this? RIH, this is one of the main myths surrounding the report. Mortimer Plano did not instigate the university to undertake the report. Let me repeat that Mortimer Plano did not instigate the university to undertake the report. At the time, Plano was not a widely known figure among the Rastafari brethren. It was his selection for the Mission to Africa delegation that launched his career and subsequent reputation. Don't get me wrong, Plano was a remarkable individual, extremely talented, but also highly political. His opening appeared as brethren wrangled and jockeyed among themselves over the delegation that was to meet with Manley to discuss the terms of the government-sponsored mission to Africa and to discuss the Rastafarian members of the mission. Plano played his hand very astutely, it should be said. Most of the senior Rastafarian brethren had withdrawn from negotiations with the government and refused to have anything further to do with it. The result was that the government was desperate to find brethren who would be cooperative. It was then that Plano emerged as a candidate who was acceptable to the government and the brethren who remained in the negotiations. Of course, over time Plano was hailed as a hero by members of the university team. I see what happened with Plano as emblematic and symptomatic of the whole cooptation process that began with the report, a process of cooptation of brethren which the university was instrumental in setting in motion. AP, why do you think younger UWI scholars have been as uncritical in their acceptance of the Rastafari report as the scholarly text it's portrayed as? Why have they taken it at face value instead of asking pertinent questions about its origin story? IH, I disagree with your comment, insofar as it appears to be restricted to younger UWI scholars. In my view, your comment applies to the present position of the entire university faculty of social science. In truth, the report functions as a sort of intellectual charter in a line of academic descent from Smith et al. To the present. Members of the faculty bask in the reflected glory, as it were, of the famous report. What it means for the healthy growth and development of Rastafari studies will have to form the topic of another conversation. Addendum. University Press Release. Daily Gleaner, July 6, 1960. A meeting was held on the evening of Monday, July 4th between the principal of the University College of the West Indies and some of the chief members of the Rastafari movement. Some of these had written to the principal asking that the college should initiate a sociological study of the movement, its ideals, aspirations, and needs. At the meeting, the principal introduced 3 members of the UCWI staff who will spend the next 2 weeks with members of the Rastafari movement, undertaking the study which has been requested. These are Dr. M. G. Smith, Senior Lecturer in Sociology, Mr. Rex Nettleford, Resident Tutor for Extramural Studies, and Dr. Roy Augier, Lecturer in History. It was emphasized that the team would be operating only at the request of these leading members of the movement, who promised to support it fully. A report would be produced, which would be available to the public. On the basis of this report, further discussions would be held to determine what the next steps should be. Manly will meet Rastas. Govt accepts African mission in principle. Gleaner political reporter. Daily Gleaner, August 3, 1960. The Honourable Norman Manley, Premier, will meet a deputation from the leaders of the Rastafari movement to discuss migration of Jamaicans back to Africa. The government, he said, accepted in principle the recommendation that a mission should go to Africa to investigate the possibilities of migration. Mr. Manley, disclosing this decision shortly before he left the island yesterday for a 10-day tour of the West Indies, said he would meet the deputation sometime during the week commencing August 15. The recommendation that the government should seek to encourage migration to Africa was made by a three-man team of the UCWI's Institute of Social and Economic Research in a report which was sent to the Premier by Dr. Arthur Lewis, principal of the UCWI. The report is being serialized on the Gleaner's editorial page, starting today. Expressing the government's appreciation of the report, Mr. Manley said, "I regard the report as a distinctive contribution to our knowledge and understanding of this difficult matter. I think it is an excellent example of how the University College of the West Indies can contribute to the life of the community and to the solution of its problems." Valuable study. The principal of the University College of the West Indies played a direct and leading part in these matters, and we are very grateful to him for his forthright initiative and to the authors of the report for the intensive and valuable study which they have made. In a covering letter to the report, Dr. Lewis suggested that the Premier should have an early meeting with a small group of leaders of the Rastafari movement. Mr. Manley replied to Dr. Lewis, observing that the report listed its first two recommendations as follows. 1. The government of Jamaica should send a mission to African countries to arrange for immigration of Jamaicans. Representatives of Rastafari brethren should be included in the mission. 2. Preparations for the mission should be discussed immediately with representatives of the Rastafari brethren, said Mr. Manley. In a letter addressed to me by Dr. Arthur Lewis, principal of the University College of the West Indies, the hope is expressed that I may be able to arrange a meeting at the earliest possible opportunity with a small group of prominent representatives of the Rastafari movement. Dr. Lewis expresses the opinion that although the movement has no single leader or group of leaders, it is willing to produce a small group of prominent representatives to discuss the recommendations contained in the report. Problems. I am willing to see a deputation from leaders of the Rastafari movement to discuss recommendations in the report and in particular to discuss the problems of migration to Africa. I consider it of great importance to find out what those problems are and to find out to what extent and subject to what conditions it is possible for persons who wish to go to Africa to leave Jamaica and to be received in any African country. I also accept the view that any mission which might go to Africa for that purpose should contain representatives of the Rastafari movement, and those representatives should be accredited leaders of the movement proceeding under the authority of their own members. I am leaving Jamaica today and will not be back until August the 12th. I hope to be able to arrange for such a meeting sometime in the week commencing August the 15th. I have left instructions for such a meeting to be arranged. I think it is right that I should make two statements about the report. First, that government accepts in principle the recommendation that a mission should go to Africa, but considers that the first purpose of such a mission must be to find out the conditions under which immigration may be possible. Government believes that everybody has the right to emigrate if he can satisfy the conditions which are required. Secondly, government has not had the opportunity of studying in detail all the other recommendations in the report, but I undertake that they will receive the most urgent attention, Mr. Manley concluded. Share this. Share.
Complete gratitude. Again, we said no to all foreign claims. We reject it.